let's talk about the military community and financial awareness.
Yeah.
I've heard this feedback a lot as far as preparedness for after the military.
Yeah.
You're about to transition to the next journey and accomplish that happiest Morgan life ever. What advice would you give to the young enlisted guys, the young officers? What advice would you give when it comes to setting up for life after?
You own your future, right? And people have to, I wish the military did a better job of training on this before it was time to get out, because you don't start the separation process until it's time to separate, right? And that's why you see a lot of the statistics that you see about veteran depression, suicide. A lot of that comes from people who don't have an identity outside the military. Like, if you ask who I am, I will tell you I'm Morgan, right? There's a lot of people you ask who they are. It's like, I am staff sergeant, blah, blah, blah. I am, petty officer, blah, blah, blah. I'm captain this, lieutenant that, right? Like, no, that's my job. That's my rank. I can go buy my rank at the next for $5. That's not who I am, right? And people don't get that until it's not necessarily too late, but it's hard to get caught up, right? One thing I tell all my students on the first day of class, I like to do these things called LT Talks. It's like after I teach all the required material for the lecture that day, I like to talk about life and lessons learned and hopefully set themselves up a little bit better than, when I was, and just try to pay it forward. But the first LT Talk I always start with is, no matter if you stay in for 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, 20 years, 30 years, you will get out of the military one day.
Facts.
And you don't have to have the answer today, tomorrow, next year, but you need to start looking for it right away. Right. And the sooner you start looking for it, finding out what you want to do afterwards. Once again, it's not a throwing a dart, hitting a bullseye, and then running, right? It is a process of elimination, right? The sooner you start that process of elimination, the higher likelihood you'll find something you like in time for whenever you get out. And the people who are getting out sooner, there's a little bit more pressure for you to find something sooner, right? And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by people and surrounded by entrepreneurs and people who invested in me to teach me that lesson. So when I got started in the military, my goal was always try to figure out how to replace my income. Right. But that's not a product of me being like, oh, I've always had this mindset. Like, no, like I had to see somebody and be impressed with somebody and look up to somebody who was doing that to want that for myself, and then figure out how was I going to achieve that. Right. Like I started a software company in college with some buddies in a business we had no business being in. And I essentially...
You have a tendency to do that, by the way.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I had no business doing this, but I did it anyway.
But we got this thing off the ground. We started this in 2015, and I was already in a delayed entry program for the military. So I left to go active duty, summer 2015, and they kept it going, obviously, because we had just started it. We had been doing it for like 6 months, and it was like picking up traction and all this stuff, all this crazy stuff. They end up going in for like a Series A equivalent round, right? Meanwhile, I'm actually deployed. I've become dead weight to the company, right? This thing, I had no idea about real estate investing at this point in time. But as they go for their Series A round, they secured investors who were going to fill that gap. They wanted to clear the cap table, right? And I was a majority owner as a co-founder, but I was providing zero time, zero value, zero nothing to the company, right? So I had zero leverage, right? And so my options were either kill the company, kill my friendships, make them find new money with less stringent requirements on a timetable that I was not going to help achieve, and risk them going under in an endeavor to do so, or walk away. And I was bitter, but I knew what I needed to do. And I figured, I did this once, I can do it again somehow. I don't know how, but we'll find it. And so in 2016, I walked away from that company. It's still around today. It's a 7-figure gross income software company now. I'm still on their About Us page, which is kind of cool, but that's my only tie to it, is the fact I'm on the website.
You're on the website.
That's kind of cool.
That's cool.
But I walked
There's
away.
no residual on him.
But like I missed out on a pretty significant exit buyout for the sake of saving my friendship and saving the company, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm proud of that decision. At the time, I was kind of bitter because I was pissed about the situation, how we had gotten to that point. But needless to say, I wasn't a part of the help or the problem. Well, I was a part of the problem because I wasn't doing anything. Like, I was deployed, right? My life was different than theirs. But I walked away, and ever since then, I was like, well, shoot, that was my passive income vehicle. And now I don't have one. But I still had that bug of like, how can I build passive income? And luckily, act of God, I found real estate at some point in time. And then through trial and error, I went through like wholesaling, didn't like that, went through single family homes like that, but it wasn't scalable.
It's not practical.
For what I wanted to do. Then I jumped into that 3 unit, which sucked. And that was the kick to the face that I needed to figure out like, hey, I can do more than I'm worth. Right. Like I was very limited, and I was hamstringing myself in my capacity because I grew up poor and because I had a government job and I didn't have much in savings. And after that was when I was like, dude, like, screw this. Like, these guys aren't that special. Like, they are, but they aren't. Like, I can do this. And and that's when I started like trying to be intentional about like, how can I do big deals? Like, what is this onion made up of? And that's when I started keeping in touch with Dan, figuring out what his goals were. And then 2 or 3 years later of like only trying to learn and like build a network and like figure out like what this looks like. Then we jumped in tail end of 2020.
1,000 units under management.
Just under, but yeah.
Oh, I'm manifesting.
Manifesting, yeah. Hopefully,
next deal. Next deal we'll put you over.
Oh, next deal we'll clip that.
Okay, let's go ahead and we're gonna put LT Talk 6 months for him. You got 6 months. The next time you come back, I wanna hear 1,000 doors. No pressure, Dan.
No pressure.
No pressure. Morgan and Dan, no pressure. If you enjoyed what you saw, like, share, comment, and forward to someone that this will bring value to. Thank you so much for all the support. We appreciate it.